Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Free Webinar Series by Wholistic Hounds. My name is Morgan Fitzgerald, and I'm a holistic dog groomer and animal Reiki practitioner, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and currently located in Central Oregon. Today we're going to be talking about end-of-life care for pets. So let's get started. Here's just a brief outline of what we're going to be talking about in today's presentation. So first, we're going to talk about the types of end-of-life care and some do's and don'ts of caring for your pet in their end of life. And then we're going to talk about the phases of the dying process. And then we're going to talk about releasing your pet with love. And at the very end, we're going to touch briefly on afterlife or rebirth. So just a brief introduction. Our pets dying is definitely one of the hardest things that we will face with them. Because we love our animals so much that sometimes just the thought of thinking of our pet dying can be too much for us, and it can trigger some fear and some anxiety. So every animal has a unique end-of-life journey. As their human caretakers, it's our job to become knowledgeable about what they may go through during their end of life so that we can better assist them during their final days. Death is often seen in the Western culture as a purely medical experience, but it is in fact quite spiritual. So in this presentation, we will discuss both the physical and spiritual elements of the dying process. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of end-of-life care for our animals. And so the first type would be palliative care. So palliative care usually involves the use of pharmaceutical medications to relieve the symptoms of disease. So in this type of care, the understanding is that there are still things that can be done to either cure the patient or to at least reduce dis-ease. So the other type of care is hospice or comfort care. So hospice is common when receiving a terminal diagnosis. And in hospice or comfort care, this is when the understanding is that the pet cannot be cured. So at this level, we have accepted that the pet is going to pass on, but in this type of care, we do everything that we can to ensure the comfort of the patient. So this could be the use of pharmaceutical medications such as painkillers, but it can also be a lot of other modalities as well. So hospice care includes all modalities that would assist the comfort of the patient. The last type of end-of-life care that we're going to talk about is alternative or holistic care. And so this type of care addresses pain management and disease symptoms in a natural, non-invasive, alternative, or holistic way. So in this type of care, the use of pharmaceutical drugs are limited and natural, non-toxic options are explored first. So this may include Chinese traditional medicine, herbs, homeopathy, laser therapy, acupuncture, chiropractic, hydrotherapy, nutritional therapy, and more. So we're going to talk about some do's and don'ts of caring for a pet in their end of life. And so you want to pay attention to these because these can make a big difference for the health of your pet during their end of life. So we're going to start with the do's. So the do's of taking care of a pet during their end of life. So do limit your pet's exposure to toxins. So this includes vaccines, pharmaceutical medications, and flea, tick, and heartworm preventatives. So a lot of people don't know about the holistic side of these medical interventions. So things like vaccines can be very taxing on an animal's immune system, especially at their end of life. And so in the scientific community, they're kind of a little bit behind because in the 90s, they actually proved that vaccines lasted a lot longer than we previously thought. And so there was one study that was done that said that a pet, after they receive their first vaccines, that they may even be immune for life. And so instead of getting your senior pet vaccinated, you want to run something called a titer test instead. And so you want to really limit all the toxins that your pet is exposed to, and vaccines are a big one. So sometimes if a senior pet is doing very well, even though they're in their end of life, and then they receive a vaccine, then you might see a decline pretty quickly because this is very taxing on the animal's immune system. And as the body ages, they can sometimes react more negatively to these interventions than previously. So, another way to limit your pet's exposure to toxins is to limit the medications that they receive. So, when deciding what medications to use for your animal during their end of life, you want to make sure that you're looking into the side effects of these drugs, especially if you intend on using them long term. And so the other toxins to limit your pet's exposure to would be flea, tick, and heartworm preventatives. So it's very common in the conventional world of pet care to consistently use flea, tick, and heartworm preventatives. But these treatments can be pretty toxic, not only to senior pets, but also to young animals as well. And so this follows into the next do, which is do consider alternative options for care under the advice of a qualified holistic veterinarian. So your holistic veterinarian can help you minimize the exposure to toxins, and they can help you come up with some alternative ways of dealing with fleas, ticks, and heartworms, if that is something that is of a concern. But it's super important to consider alternative options and to not just solely focus on conventional or allopathic ways of dealing with this, because some of the holistic modalities can be really helpful for our animals in their end of life. So, do address physical symptoms of disease and pain management, whether with drugs or alternative options. So, it's very important to address your animal's physical needs during their end of life. And equally, you want to make sure that you do address you and your pet's spiritual needs through meditation, breath work, yoga, energy work, or prayer. And so it's very common that when our pet is experiencing end of life, that we get so caught up in managing the symptoms of disease with the drugs or other things, and that we kind of forget the spiritual aspect of the dying process. So it's very important to address not only your pet's spiritual needs, but yours as well, because this is going to be a very emotional experience for you and your animal. So doing things like meditation and breath work can really help to make this process go a lot more smoothly and to be faced with more acceptance and less resistance. Okay, so switching over to the other side, the don'ts. So, some don'ts of taking care of a pet in their end of life. So, do not get unnecessary vaccines or medications for your pet. And again, refer back to a qualified holistic veterinarian for help with that. Do not underestimate the effects of a good diet, healthy nutrition, and additional supplements. So I see too often where a pet receives a diagnosis and the pet parent kind of just gives up and doesn't address healthy nutrition, doesn't address additional supplements. So diet is a big factor in health, and it's never too late to adjust our animal's diet into something a little bit healthier. So, for these animals, especially the ones that have cancer or another terminal diagnosis, the effects of a good diet, um, organic whole foods coming from a fresh source, human grade ingredients, and additional supplements. So, there's a lot of different supplements that you can use, but there's CBD and then the joint supplements. There's a lot of different supplements that can be helpful for pets in end of life care. So, again, you definitely want to refer to your qualified holistic veterinarian for help with that. But do not underestimate the effects of a good diet for even a dog that has cancer or a terminal diagnosis. So, do not take away activities that the animal loves or that still bring them joy. A lot of times we get over worried about certain things when our pet is declining. So we want to make sure that we don't take away activities that they still enjoy. So in this last one is very important. Do not forget to take care of your own needs as well. You can offer more to your pet when you are balanced and healthy, and this includes emotional health. So it's very important for us to remember to take care of ourselves during our pet's end of life and not to just solely focus on their care, because it helps them when we help ourselves. So very quickly, we're going to go through the stages of the dying process. So in Western cultures, we typically see the dying process in three different stages: early, middle, and final. In the early stage of dying, the pet may start eating and drinking less as the physical body starts preparing to shut down. You do not want to force feed at this stage, since this is the animal's way of saying that they're ready to go. So this stage can last anywhere from 3 days to several months. And this is the stage at which spiritual ascension begins for the pet. So at the middle stage of the dying process is when physical changes begin to occur. And this is because the pet is beginning to detach from their physical vessel. So their body begins to slowly shut down. So generally at this stage, the animal knows death is coming. So increases in spiritual perception are probable. And the final stage. In the final stage of the dying process, the body is shutting down its normal functioning. So this is when you may see your pet have trouble going to the bathroom on their own. You may also see changes in their breathing. So disorientation and restlessness can occur, but so can increased energy and attentiveness. So spiritually, the pet is raising their vibration to prepare to transition. So just a quick note here at the bottom. In Eastern cultures, there are at least 8 stages of dying, and the physical death happens at stage 4. So this tells us there is a great spiritual and energetic component to the dying process. So we don't have to go through our pet's end of life alone. There are a lot of amazing professionals that can help us go through this experience. And so the first one might be the most obvious, but a holistic or homeopathic veterinarian. And so I always emphasize a holistic or a homeopathic veterinarian because allopathic veterinarians or conventional vets, they don't always have all the answers and they don't always have all of the tools available for our animal. So it's always my recommendation to additionally seek out the advice of a holistic or especially a homeopathic veterinarian, especially when dealing with chronic or terminal cases. So some other professionals that can help are an animal Reiki practitioner or energy healer, and that addresses the spiritual aspect of the animal's wellness. An animal communicator. Animal communicators can be very helpful during the end of life for your pet because they can help tune in with your animal to see what are some of the things that they might want for their care. So one that I have heard of animal communicators being utilized for is coming up with bucket list requests. So some things that your animal might like to do before they pass on. And so an animal communicator can be a great professional to add to your end of life care for your pet. And then we have a pet grief counselor, which grief is it's something that's very significant when we're losing a pet. So we do want to make sure we're reaching out to a counselor for help if we're dealing with the end of life care for our animal. An animal chaplain, which is someone that is well versed in a lot of different areas that can help. And then something that's a little bit newer is a pet death doula, which is someone that can assist you with support during the process of end of life for your animal. So if you do feel like you need additional support, then definitely reach out to someone, a professional that can help. You don't have to go through it alone. So we're going to talk about releasing your pet with love. And we're just going to go through this quickly since we're a little bit limited on the time that we have left. But euthanasia is the process of ending our pet's life through lethal injection by a veterinarian usually. And so euthanasia can be a blessing in disguise for pets who are past the point of return. Especially when extensive pain or suffering is experienced, euthanasia can be a beautiful and loving choice. However, euthanasia must be something that brings a sense of relief, not something that doesn't feel right or feel in alignment. So make sure to use your own intuition to make this decision rather than relying solely on your vet. So it's not uncommon for us to either let our pets go too early or too late. So as long as you are making sure that you're utilizing your intuition and you're releasing your pet with love, then the time is right. And only you will know that. You are the best advocate for your animal. So if you're unsure, then tune into your intuition or get into a quiet space of meditation and the answer will come to you. It's very common for pet parents to feel guilty during their pet's end of life, but this can lead to some stagnation. So it's important for us to make decisions out of love rather than fear. So the other option that we have is a natural death. So letting your pet die naturally may be an option only if your pet doesn't have any excruciating pain or terminal illnesses. It may be difficult for a lot of us to offer our pets a natural death because it's really uncomfortable for us to watch their physical vessels shut down. This way of letting a pet go allows them to transition naturally without the need for medications or medical interventions. And some pets do prefer a natural death over euthanasia. So, again, this is a very personal choice, and it's something that needs to be done from a place of love rather than fear. And as long as you're coming from a place of love, you will be making the right decision. So, very quickly, before we finish up here, we're going to talk about the emotional connection we have with our animals and the impact of that connection. So, managing our own emotions during our pet's end of life journey is of utmost importance because they feel everything we feel. Emotions like fear carry a very low vibrational frequency. And when our pets are transitioning from the physical world to the spiritual world, their spiritual vibration is raising in love and light. So, regardless of anything that is appearing to happen to their physical body, your pet's spiritual vibration is raising and ascending. So, it's very natural for us to feel fear, guilt, and depression when our pet is dying. But because fear is an opposing energy to love, it can lead to stagnation. And death is truly about expansion. So it's okay for us to feel these low vibrational emotions, but we must not sit there. In order to meet our pets in that realm of love when they're ascending, we really want to be in a loving space. But again, if you do release your pet with fear, that's okay. And you can go back later once things have calmed down and send some Reiki and healing energy to the situation. But releasing your pet with love is the best thing that you can do for them and for yourself. So it's just important to be mindful of our own emotional state so that we can really send our animal to the rainbow bridge with the most love that we can muster up. So it's important to let go of fear and anxiety and guilt and to raise ourselves back into love where our pet is. And just really quickly, while we're finishing up, we're going to talk about afterlife and reincarnation. So, depending on your beliefs, some of us believe that animals are reincarnated. So, in Buddhist and Hindu traditions, support this belief in reincarnation. And so, I'm going to use some scientific ways of explaining why reincarnation is possible and how it's possible. So, the law of conservation of energy tells us that energy is never created or destroyed. It only changes forms. So this can be applied to the death of our pet. Their soul continues on after death and may even reincarnate in a new physical vessel. Quantum entanglement tells us that once two beings are connected, they remain connected beyond space and time. And this is how we are able to stay connected to our pets even after they pass on, and how we are able to communicate with them. So that's all I have for this presentation. And I know I went through this end part really quickly, but it's just something to be open to. Because a lot of us are afraid that we'll never see our animal again or that our connection is done. But due to the law of conservation of energy and the quantum physics law of quantum entanglement, we know that we are connected beyond space and time. So that love that you have with your animal is something that lives on forever. And if it's meant to be, your animal will find you again. So you don't have to be afraid that the connection ends forever. The physical loss might be hard, but let's remember that spiritually, we are always connected. So thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Morgan. I'm the owner of Wholistic Hounds. And please feel free to visit my website for more info at www.holistichounds.dog. Thank you and have a wonderful day. See you next time.